Hey all, welcome to Keys to Basement Tuesday. I decided to call today Trippin' Tuesday. Seems like the whole day that's all I was doing. Do a little adjustment here, sorry. Okay, today's story has no title, but it's fun and I wrote it 6 years ago. I actually put the date on the inside of the folder as 8/20/2013, if you can believe that. Been writing that longer. Anyway, I hope you find it comical. Have a little fun with it. Cut me some slack. I've been working all day. I started at the school this morning, and I got off from my other place of work at 10, and it's going on midnight now. So hold on to your seats. Here we go. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a prince. This prince was not like all the others. He had a fashion sense and knew how to accessorize. All princesses had heard about him and never cared to hang out at his castle because it was different. Wild lilies that were blue as the sky were planted all around the castle. Those lilies were planted by his mother. Gert, the prince, would cry when he looked at them because he was very emotional. Gert's father, Linder, tried for the longest time to find a suitable wife for Gert. Sadly, the women in the surrounding kingdoms, and even the ones close by, were such snobs, really uptight and into only themselves, that Linder could never live with himself if he made his son marry any of them. Gert felt the same way. That feeling almost made him bitter. But he was a better prince than that. One day Gert's father fell ill with some disease called flippin' farts. It was the same disease that his mother had died from. Flippin' farts was a terrible disease of that day. Uncurable, yet a slow killer. Enzymes in the body cause buildup of gas that you would never know which fart would be your last. One day, you would just let a fart go, and suddenly, your rectal orifice would fall out. Sure, many experts would try to put it back in, but it was no use. It was April 3rd when his father passed. Gert wept. Nobody was ever sure if Gert wept so long because of his father's passing, or the stench that was still lingering 4 years later. When the castle was finally deep cleaned and restored, Gert decided it was time to bust out and go to work. He had never worked before, and he decided it was time. So, he put on his best clothes, and he ran into town, but the town was all abandoned except for one lone clothing store. Business was great, after all. What noble person could go without clothes and still remain noble, right? Even though the shop was thriving, the shop owner had already overstaffed the store and could not keep up. Gert thanked the owner for his consideration and hospitality and started home. As Gert reached the edge of town, the nephew of the store's owner poked his head out from behind a tree, laughing and sneering at Gert because he didn't get the job. The owner's nephew had just begun giving the last opening. He had just been given the last opening of the shop. Gert kept on walking. Not in shame, but he just kept on walking. Gert made it all the way back to the castle, flopped on the couch, sighed, and fell asleep. The next morning he awoke to the sun shining in his face. Gert didn't want to get up, but alas, he got up. Later on that day, there was a commotion. It's hard to read. There was commotion in his yard. He ran out the door to see a crowd gathered around the sky blue lilies his mother planted. "What's going on here?" he shouted with an annoyed tone in his voice. "Your lilies!" cried the town's botanist. "They are so rare and well taken care of." The crowd burst into cheers. That was so loud the neighboring town heard it. Only one person from the neighboring town came to see what was going on. Caravan from Scooptaville came and saw the lilies, then went back to Scooptaville with the news of the lilies. In disbelief, botanists came from all over the world, a long journey to come see Gert's lilies. Seasons passed, and somehow the lilies never wilted or lost their color or spunk. Gert spent all his time throwing parties in his castle and tending to his precious lilies, that he had turned into an old man. One day, the castle door opened slowly, and there was an old woman standing in the doorway, smiling. Gert lifted his head, staring at her beauty. In her arms were yellow lilies. "For years," she said, "I've never been able to keep up with my lilies, and I have traveled long way just to seek your advice." "Alas," Gert said, "'twas my mother who planted them." He asked the woman to stay, and they would figure it out together. The next day, together, they planted her yellow lilies next to his blue ones, and in the months that followed, they grew together, just as the lilies did. Soon after they were married, Gert fell ill, just like his father and his mother. Ting, Gert's wife, cried and prayed every night for a cure to flippin' farts. Soon Gert was so ill that he was unable to see his or Ting's lilies. And Ting, spending all her time taking care of Gert, had neglected to see what had happened to the lilies. Finally, Gert had come to his final day, the day he was sure he would die, when Ting came running into the room with the sum of their love in her hands. She instructed him to eat it, and so he did. Instant relief came over Gert, and the pain subsided, and he was cured. But what was it that cured him? When no one was keeping up with the lilies, they had crossbreeded. The love of her flowers and the love of his had come together, and lo and behold, the green lily was born. Even to this very day, this lily is still the cure to the horrible flippin' farts disease. I'd like to say that Gert and Ting lived happily ever after, but rumor has it her gas was worse than his, so much so that Gert met a tragic and horrible death by stench. Scientists now said that Ting was allergic to the green lilies, and that is how she died. But the lilies live on behind the weeds and the vines that cover the castle that was filled with love and joy. Now it was empty and cold. The end. Thanks for tuning in. If you loved it, let me know. If you hated it, let me know. I actually enjoy reading all the comments, so if you have a long comment, go ahead and just let it out. Just let me know. Once again, this was Keys to Basement, Tippin' Tuesday. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Take care.